to you about abstract things, like the changes that are going on in the world, changes that are going on that are too strange or weird to understand, things you can notice but you don't really get, like the Mandela Effect, changes in the physical body that most don't even notice unless you're a medical doctor, and even many of them aren't noticing. But I haven't really talked to you about practical things. Changes in things that matter. And that wasn't a mistake on my part. I don't think you were ready for me to talk to you about it. See, I want to talk about things like faith and hope and love and trust, dance and play and relationship. And those things have been tough to talk about for several reasons. The first is kind of the burn victim response. Imagine you're cooking or playing with a campfire or something and you burn yourself. Not just a tiny burn on your finger, but say you spill some hot water or grab a hot pan and you get a decent sized burn. What you'll notice is that until that's healed, breathe deep, until that heals, every time you reach towards something hot, that area will be super sensitive to the heat. That which is burned is very, very cautious. And it's not a thinking reaction. It's not an emotion reaction. It's a very primitive reaction, and it's reasonable and healthy. You see the same reaction if you've ever been in a relationship and it ended badly. Someone lied to you. Someone hurt you, someone was taking advantage of you. We use the same language in English. When something goes wrong in a relationship, we say, you got burned. And for a long time afterwards, anytime something of relationship comes to you, you're nervous, you're anxious, you're scared, you're angry, you push it away. So physically you've been burned, emotionally deep in your guts you've been burned, and intellectually you've been burned. The first three levels, you've been burned by life in terms of trust and joy and hope and relationship and dance and fun and play. In terms of the first three levels, you've been burned. And the third level, intellectually, I think that's trivially derivative, but I'll suggest it because maybe you don't understand, but people lie to you, and sometimes they do it just for fun. Perhaps you had a father who used to tell you lies. A lot of fathers think this is fun, to lie to their children, to tell them the moon is made of cheese, or that they'll always be there for you. Fathers just enjoy lying, many of them. And you've all had teachers who've lied to you. Maybe they told you the earth was round and you now think it's flat. Maybe they told you it's flat and you now think it's round. Maybe they told you that Darwin was a genius. Darwin was an idiot. He had some cool ideas, but he's really handicapped the entirety of the science that's come after him. between the idiocy of Darwin's and the idiocy of the religious people claiming that some mystical bearded ghost in the clouds you can't see but have to believe in created the entire universe in 7 days by breathing or farting or some such nonsense. Between Darwin and the myth of God, you've been lied to. And it's not just that. Sometimes it's unintentional. They do their best. Sometimes it's intentional. Oh gosh, I don't want to sound like I'm being unkind. I get very offended when someone lies to someone I care about, and I care about most of the people in the world. The boy called Max Lohan on YouTube, who's clearly a fraud, and he's doing this as a sort of Johnny Carson thing. He wants his moment of fame. It bothers me because he's lying to all of you just to get a little popularity for him and his handler. And when I look at Einstein, who I've quoted many times in my life and thought was a really bright guy, but when I really look at him, I find a kind of grown-up Max Lohan. And so when they say this fraudulent child is a young Einstein, I think they're correct. When I look, deep breath, I know for the scientists and the religious people I'm pushing buttons. This is not my intention to push buttons. It's to say your buttons have been pushed your whole life. Yeah. And maybe Einstein was truly a genius. And someday we'll figure out that my feelings on him are just mistaken. Yeah, maybe we'll find that this Max Lohan boy will someday be, a real living Big Bang Theory. I'm thinking of the TV show. Maybe we'll find they are. But a lot of these people that we've believed in, we're going to find that they lied to us. Now, if you have a university degree or an advanced degree, you've put a lot of stock in your learning. And learning in university in science and math and so on, a lot of that, well, let's take math out. Math is magic. But a lot of science, a lot of engineering, a lot of these things are a lot like church, in that people tell you you have to believe these things because some holy person once said them. And if you're in 5th or 6th grade and you question Darwin or Einstein or one of these demigods of the science religion, your teacher's going to get angry and call you names and call your parents and tell them you're a bad student. And as a child, it's especially bad. Because your parents don't tell you, look, some people believe in God and some don't. And some people believe in different gods. Here, let me be kind to you and make a list of, all the different gods in the world. And tell you what they represent, and you can decide if you believe in them. Because, we want you to learn to decide. They tell you, you have to believe in my God, in the way I do it. And if that means strapping a suicide bomb to your chest, then you believe that. And if that means going to church and speaking in tongues and inviting some mysterious entity that you don't know to come and live inside you and possess you, then you have to do that. And if that means watching religious snuff films of some guy being tortured to death, then you have to do that. And anytime you have a question, anytime you say, but that doesn't make sense, right? You say, I have to believe this holy book, but this holy book says women shouldn't be teaching and they should be silent in church, and I hear you talking all the time, Mom. You're going to get beaten or sent to bed without dinner or ridiculed. Anytime you point out some of the flaws, right? This holy book says this most important moment in history when this guy rose from the tomb. It's got 4 different versions of the story and they're all different. If this had really happened, wouldn't people have written something down and got it right? And then you get older and you find out that the first of these 4 stories was written 70 years after the supposed death of the mythical Jesus. And the 4th one was written 150 years later. I mean, by then, can you trust any story? I mean, imagine right now, just to pick on the same kid so I don't have to keep hurting different people. Imagine right now that you grow up, you have kids, you die, those kids grow up, they have kids, they die. And in the 4th generation, one of them tries to tell a story about this Max Lohan kid who was lying to everybody on the internet. 4 generations later, you think they're going to get anything right? The holy books have been lying to you because they're based in made-up stories and run by groups who are trying to control you. And again, I'm not saying this to offend the religious people. I'm saying that those who've been burned have to heal. And if you are one of those who's still burning away your ability to trust, your ability to believe, your ability to feel joy, to breathe and experience life, to have a relationship, to dance and to play, if you're still constantly burning yourself and burning up all these things by believing in one of these God myths, and they're all myths. There is no God like anything represented in the world. These are all based in bad stories from horrible things that happened in the past. If you're still torturing yourself every day by forcing yourself to believe in a God myth which you know isn't true, if you wake up every day thinking, I know this isn't true, this book doesn't make sense, all this hatred and fear is wrong, I can feel it. If there really were a God who was love, then it wouldn't be saying go out and kill these people, cut open these pregnant women and dash their babies' heads on the ground, and the kind of horrible things that the scriptures say. You know it's not true. You quit believing when you were a child because you burned up your ability to believe. And now, for most of you, God is just a habit. Science is just a habit. You don't really believe in gravity. You use it, but you don't understand it. You don't understand, most of you, how fire works or how an internal combustion engine works. You just trust that if you light a match or a lighter, you'll get fire. You just trust that if you put the key in the ignition of your car or an airplane that it will start, but you don't get it. Now, I don't want to say that an internal combustion engine is like God. There are people, including myself, who know how these things work. And chemistry also, we know how some of it works. But only down to a certain limit. Right? Science can get you, come back. I'm not trying to bore you. I'm trying to say you've been burned. I'm trying to say you've been burned by your parents who've lied to you your entire life by giving you their beliefs and their fears. You've been lied to by your teachers who meant well, but they couldn't say what they really thought. And even they had their own sets of beliefs. You've been lied to by your governments. Everything your governments are telling you, for the most part, is a lie. You've been lied to by your bankers and lied to about money. You've been lied to about nature, about God, about relationships. I once wrote something decades ago about here are 50 truths everybody knows about relationships, and they are also brilliant and obvious and true. You all know them. But then I went and showed how all 50 of them are lies. How you can have a better relationship once you throw them all away. And this is such a radical thing that everybody I've talked to, they had trouble when they first read it. And then after they worked with it for a while, they said, this is so profound. I don't know if I can have a relationship for a while. You've been lied to by everything you've trusted and everybody you've cared about, even by your friends in school. Right? Kids say things like, oh, this word isn't in the dictionary. And when you go and look it up, they say, haha, you're an idiot. We lied to you. Your parents say, Santa Claus is real. And when you grow up and find out he's not, you're crushed, but you're angry and frustrated, and there's nothing you can do. What I want to tell you, what I want you to get here, if there's anybody still listening, what I want you to get is that, yes, we have to love. Love is immensely important. And love is not a thing of the mind or the emotions. But love by itself is empty. Now I know there are those who will doubt that, but just love, just this intense, pure love, without being able to touch someone, without being able to hug a teddy bear or pet your bunny rabbit or your cat or your puppy, without being able to look at your kids and watch them succeed and play and climb a tree or do something wonderful in school like a dance or a play or something. Without these physical things, love it's a thing outside this world. Without all of the stuff of the human, of the animal experience, love's not enough. Now don't get me wrong, I think love is everything. I think we can sacrifice everything else and have nothing but love. But that's the stuff for people like, I don't know, St. Francis or some ancient guru. It takes decades of growing and learning till you realize the power of love. And to get there, you have to be able to touch people, to eat tasty food, to soak up the sun on a beautiful day, have a warm shower, soak in a hot tub, go swimming in the ocean. Watch fish in a fish tank, or watch animals playing, or play with your own pets. You've got to be in relationships and love and trust. You've got to, once you throw away the myth of God, not fall into this dark, deep void of science where they say there's nothing. You're born out of random luck and magic, and you live a short time and you die and you degrade. That's a horrible, depressing thing. There is an infinite. There is that of spirituality. There are things to believe in and trust. You can't go the dark, ugly, hopeless way that your modern derivative sciences have gone there. They do you a massive disservice. And you can't jump headlong into some religion and have some person say, you have to partake in ritual cannibalism, eating flesh and drinking blood, and watch snuff films, and hate homosexuals or people of different races, or, if somebody's wounded in their testicles, they can't be part of your church up to 9 or 10 generations. Right? Your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather had an injury and lost his balls, so you can't go to church. I don't think that makes sense, but the Bible says so. I'm telling you that there is an infinite, there's a spiritual, there are things outside of this life. When you leave this life, you will not die, you will go home. And those people who have gone home are still there watching and want to help. They communicate through people who are channels. They talk to you in your dreams. And it's beautiful. It's not scary. And you can learn to listen, and you can learn to trust, and you can learn discernment. And in it you can find joy, and you can play, and you can dance, and you can touch, and you can live, and you can have these things that you need. But your ability to have these things has been stripped from you by religion, by science, by your parents, by education, and even the people who are rebelling. Even the people who are saying, look, I think religion is lying to us. I think our government is lying to us. I think maybe this whole 9/11 thing was a fake. I think killing Duke Ferdinand and starting the World War. I think this was a setup. I think killing Kennedy. I think the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think the so-called war in the Middle East. I think the terrorist threat. I think a lot of these things, they're lying to us about them. I think we should look more closely at them. Now, I'm not saying those things to you. Believe them not, I don't care. I'm saying there are people who are saying these things. There are people saying, question your government, question your science. Is the earth flat or rounded? Not a relevant question, not an interesting question. Is the earth a matrix or a simulation? Who cares? Right? If you want to hug your 2-year-old because you're so happy, you love this child. It doesn't matter if it's a simulation or if it's, something you would call real. The shape doesn't matter. The experience matters, right? These things you're questioning don't matter. But I'm proud of you for questioning them. I want you questioning them. I want you questioning your governments. How do you tell if a politician's lying? Their lips are moving. You can't trust them to walk your dog. Your politicians have been lying to you forever. Your priests and teachers and ministers have been lying to you forever. Your parents have been lying to you, not because they hate you, but because their parents and their teachers and their priests and ministers and politicians lied to them. Their scientists lied to them. Everybody's lied to you for years. Of course it's hard to trust. Every relationship you've had, people have lied to you from your first date. They pretend to be things they're not. On their profile they say they're taller or they're shorter or they're thinner or they're fatter or they're sexier. They don't talk about all the baggage and fear and pain they're carrying, and everybody's got baggage and fear and pain. Every single person in your life, everyone you've trusted has lied to you. Can you hear me on this? I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be unkind. I'm not trying to be unfair. I'm trying to help you to understand that this world has been a really damaged place. And I'm telling you that this world is healing. That there'll be a time in the next few years where war is impossible, because humans will have evolved past it. I'm telling you that Atlantis will come back. It wasn't destroyed, it was just lost. It got folded in a catastrophe orthogonal, perpendicular to your reality, and it'll unfold and the earth will repair. And if you're paying attention to things like South America moving, or Australia moving, or England being closer to Europe, or the Straits of Gibraltar being so much closer to closing off completely. If you're paying attention to these changes, Europe is half the size it used to be. If you're paying attention to these things and you're wondering why, it's because the world is finally straightening itself out. This catastrophe has been repaired. And I'm telling you, don't trust me on this. You've trusted too many people and you've got lied to. And you don't know me. You don't know me, you don't love me deeply. I'm a stranger to you. I'm telling you, here are ideas to think about and to find your own answers in. Anybody who gives you answers is an enemy of your learning. Anybody who loves you will help you to discover, to discern, to access the superconscious awareness nexus and scan. They'll teach you to find that truth in yourself. And find the joy and the oomph. Find that experience where the hairs on your arms stand up or the goosebumps go down in that cross shape on your back. And you'll say, ooh, that feels really true for me. A good teacher will tell you, here's how to discern the truth. And here are better questions to ask. I'm a good teacher. But I don't expect you to believe that. What I'm trying to do is not give you answers. A lot of people are addicted to alcohol or drugs or have been, and they go to AA or NA. And what these people do is take your addiction to alcohol or drugs and they replace it with an addiction to something else. The first step is to admit your power. Hey, this is important. This really matters. They tell you your first step is to admit you're powerless, weak, helpless, and then you have to make up some mythical God who will save you and believe in it. I appreciate that AA and NA have helped a lot of people, but this is fucking lunacy. If you're bothered by words like that, I apologize. The point is that I feel emphatic about this. You don't cure someone from an addiction by giving them another addiction. You don't teach someone to trust by giving them another lie. Here's my basic thesis, my basic idea. Here's what I'm telling you. In order to be happy, you have to trust. You can never have a healthy relationship, even if it's just someone you play sports with or play games with once a week. You can never have a healthy relationship if you don't trust. You need joy. You need it. You need to walk in the trees or listen to the sound of the ocean or watch airliners landing or, I don't know, study history or read a book or whatever it is you do for entertainment. You need to have joy in this. You need to enjoy it. Otherwise, it's just a thing you do and you're bored your whole life. Those are your choices, joy or boredom. And boredom is just slow motion suicide. It'll kill you. You need to have trust. You need to have joy. You need to play. And you've learned that competition and anger and aggression and defeating other people and saying, you loser, I owned you, or, oh, I'm a total noob, I'm a failure. You've learned that this kind of aggression and competition is play, and it's not. Play, everybody wins and you have fun. Now, you don't understand this yet, but if anybody wins, then it's not a game, it's a competition. It's a fight. It's just a polite way to do warfare. You need to have play, you need to have joy, you need to have trust, you need to have touch. Humans need touch. Humans need to talk. If you never talk, you'll go crazy. Humans need to listen, and we are humans. We wear this meat suit, this body, and I don't care if you think it's a matrix simulation. I don't care if you think that God's real and made us in a few days by breathing into the dust, or some, the big whoosh theory. God breathed life into the universe, or the Big Bang theory. Some magical event happened and all the matter just suddenly exploded, and none of the math works out because the Big Bang theory is bullshit. And we have to pretend that 90% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy and dark things that we can't perceive just to make the math work. Well, that's because the math is wrong. The Big Bang theory is just another religion. You need joy. Point one. You need trust. You need relationships. You need touch. You need play. You need dance. You need music. You need fun, enthusiasm. You need these things. Otherwise, your life is boredom and fear and slow motion suicide. Right? Point one, you need those things. Point two, nobody has ever taught you those things. Your preachers who should have given you the greatest truths in your life and set you on a spiritual journey have lied to you. They just want to make money, or they're as deceived as you are. Your parents who are supposed to love you more than anybody have lied to you. Your governments who your governments who should be taking care of the boring stuff, like making sure there's roads to drive on and fuel at the filling station and food in the supermarket, the boring stuff, paying the firemen and the policemen to keep life from becoming chaos. Your government should be handling all that boring stuff. And you find that for the entire history of humanity, governments have been stealing and embezzling money and taking away your freedom so they can have a nicer house in the Bahamas or the Florida Keys or the south of France. Your governments, your preachers, your teachers, your scientists, your parents, your friends, your lovers, they've all been lying to you. Many people call it a game. Hey, I'm a player. I'm supposed to lie. If you tell someone you love them and lie to them, you are a greater criminal than the religious, than the governments, than the sciences. Because to tell someone you love them opens them up to trust and caring and intensity. And then you lie to them. It makes you one of the greatest criminals of this world. I would rather you be another Stalin or Adolf Hitler and be out killing and torturing overtly than to be a player. Someone who plays with people's ability to trust and ruins their life. I would rather see every player in this world dead and gone from this world than have 10% of the population we do, than to have even one of you lying to the people you love or you say you love. Because those are what you most need. Point one, you need those things. Point two, every time you've ever learned about them or practiced them, you've been burned. These two ideas I want you to get. If I'm repeating myself, it's because I'm saying things that are so simple, anyone can understand them, and yet so radical that almost everyone will fight them. You all know, and I put this word "know" in quotes, like no, don't do it anymore. You all know that relationships are a game and you have to be a player. You can't wholeheartedly invest yourself in a relationship you can't trust because they'll take advantage of you. You know that. It's always a give and take, a negotiation, a détente, a DMZ. This is what relationships are for you, and it horrifies me. Many of you believe in your gods, you really do, and you're wonderful people, and yet you live your life in terror of going to hell. If there were a God, it would be teaching you, I love you, and no matter what you do, even if you do bad, when you finish, you'll go to heaven. Right? The scriptures tell this story of a boy who goes to his father and says, I'm not digressing here. I'm trying to say a simple thing over and over and over in many ways, so as many people as possible can understand it. If I bore you, that's fine, stop listening. But I want as many as possible to get this. This is so important. This is what all of the changes in your planet, in your body, in the universe, in the destroying of all the dark things, and the fear and the hate and the warfare, this is what it leads to. Because if you end up with a perfect world and you don't have love and joy and the ability to touch and to trust and to care and to play and to dance, to let down your guard and not be hurt, then all the rest of that's a waste of time. We should let World War III happen and wipe out humanity and start over with the bunnies or the cockroaches. If you can't have these things, then everything else is a total waste. Life is just slow motion suicide, boredom waiting to die. If you cannot have these things, all the rest of the work that is going on in your world, all the amazing and beautiful things, the new colors, the new animals, the new land that's appearing, all of these wonderful things will be a waste to you. Try to feel this, not believe it. Try to feel it. If you cannot have trust and touch and community and friendship and play, all the rest is a waste. I don't care if you can fly to the moon or Mars. I don't care if you can teleport or generate food in a Star Trek replicator. I haven't forgotten this story. I'm getting back to it. But I'll jump to another. If you had Captain Kirk and Spock in the original Star Wars, or the recent one, and they had teleporters and food generators and they could fly to different planets, and you didn't have this relationship between Spock and Kirk, you wouldn't watch it. It is that relationship that matters. If you didn't have Scotty with his self-doubts, saying, I don't know if I can do it, I don't know if the engines will handle it. If you didn't have Kirk taking these risks and trying these crazy things. If you didn't have Spock being logical, but learning about emotion. If you didn't have Bones saying, damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a lots of other things. It's the relationships that make that matter. The same in Star Wars, the same in every great story. If you didn't have the relationships and the kindness, the friendship, the trust, the touching, the affection, the intimacy, the communication, it would be a cold, sterile story. It would be as cold as your sciences. So we go back to this story, and I quote this story because it comes from the religious people. It comes from the Christians. The story says that a man had two boys, two sons. Right? He maybe had daughters, but the Bible teaches us daughters don't matter. Sad, but it's what it says. The Bible comes from a dark time, a long time ago. But here's the story from it. This man had two sons, and one of them said, I'm tired of working all the time. I want you to give me my half of the inheritance and let me go. And the boy takes that money and goes and lives a wild life. He does sex and drugs and, the 2nd century AD version of rock and roll. He has fun, he parties, he gets stoned. And he lives a wild life, and he figures out some of who he is. But eventually he finds out that living a wild life uses up all your money, and he ends up broke. And he takes terrible jobs, like you guys who are trying to live a wonderful life, but you end up working in McDonald's or a supermarket with a boss who's a total ass. And you struggle, and finally this boy says, look, I'm here begging for scraps. I'm stealing food from the pigs to eat. And my father has all this money, but he's going to hate me because I left. And he says, I'm going to go back and beg for mercy. And he goes back to beg for mercy. And if this father in the Bible were like your so-called God, your infinite loving God, he would say, you rejected me. And he would send that boy to be tortured forever and ever. But he doesn't. He says, I thought my son was dead and now he's back. I'm going to throw the biggest party ever. And the other son, who was working hard and being a good kid all the time, says, it's not fair. He was a sinner, and he's getting celebrated. I worked hard, and all I'm getting is more work. And the father says, look, I thought you were alive, and I loved you, and I talked to you every day. But I haven't even seen him. I thought he was dead, and now I can love him, I can hug him, I can talk to him again. And this is how any parent in your world, any good parent would do it. This is obvious, yes? Everybody can see. If you're even a decent person, this is how you would do it. If someone you once loved and thought was dead came back, you wouldn't say, you abandoned me. You'd say, hooray, you're back. And if God is bigger and better than you, if it exists at all, and you spent your life as a sinner and died and went to heaven, there would be a God there saying, you're a sinner, I'm going to throw a party for you. You've spent your life not knowing about me. Like this father, right? A God who is even as decent a person as you would say, you've spent your life without me, you've spent your life in fear and pain, and now come to heaven and I'm going to throw a big party. And some Christian would say, wait a minute, I went to church all the time and I did good works, and you're not throwing a party for me. And just like the story, if there were a God in a heaven, that God would say, I got to say I love you every day. I got to be part of your life every day, but I thought this one was lost. And so we're going to throw a party and welcome this one back. And every day in heaven there would be parties welcoming all the sinners back. Because after a lifetime of fear and loneliness and pain, suddenly they get to know this unity, this harmony again. If God were real, that's what it would look like. That you can believe in, that you are so ugly and savage and primitive that you can march around shouting, God hates this and God hates this. We have to kill these people and I hope this person dies and I hope the angels torture you. If you can say that shit, you don't serve a God of love, you serve a devil. You serve a being of hate because you express hate in every moment. And I don't care what you believe, you're wrong. Anything that causes you to hate is not an act of holiness. It's an act of destruction and violence. It's an act of demonic, of evil. And there is no God. There are no demons like you know them. But if that's a mythology you work in and you behave in this horrible way, you think you should kill, you think you should hate, you think you should judge, then you are an evildoer. If there were a God, it would love at least as much as I do, because who am I? And I'm just a person in a body. And if I were sitting on a throne watching this world, I would take every single person who died and bring them to heaven. And the ones who did horrible things, I would tell them I love them more than the ones who did good things because they need it more. And I would help them to heal until they remembered how to love and remembered what joy is and play and dance. If I were the God of this world, there is no God of this world, but if I were that, I could do at least this well. And if you want to hypothesize somebody who's infinite and all-knowing and all-loving and bigger than me, then it damned well better stand up to my standards. Hell, if you want to tell me this person's the best chef in the world and they can't cook better than me, then they're not the best chef in the world. You want to tell me there's some infinite being that's better than all of us? It goddamned well, and I say that on purpose, better be better than me. It better be better than you. If you can look and say, how would you do it? If you were God, would you consciously send people to be tortured and watch them torture and laugh in glee as they suffer? Are you that damaged and ugly a person? I don't think so. You might, if you're limited, want to punish them for a while, but eventually say, look, let's give them a chance to do better. And if you can imagine that, then a God who's infinite should be able to do better than you. Just like a chef who's the best should be able to cook better than you. The best dancer should be able to dance better than you. You cannot believe in a God that is this fucked up. I simply don't know how to say that without swearing about it. No person who is not a psychopath, a sociopath, a completely screwed up human being can believe in the God you've been told. You have to believe there's something better out there if you're going to believe at all. And see, here's the thing. You need to believe to be happy. I have said to the people I teach that belief is the most damaging thing you can do. Because once you believe something, you can never learn anything else. But that's an expression of a warfare approach to life. It's something that people of life have needed in a world that's been so shadowed. Come back to me. It's been necessary to be constantly on the alert and cautious and fighting in a world of shadow. But we are moving into a world of light. And in a world of light, you need belief. When you go on a first date with someone and they say on their profile they're this, you need to be able to believe it. You find this picture of a young Arnold Schwarzenegger, you go on a date and you're dating Danny DeVito. Nobody should have an experience like that. Nobody should be lied to. From our earliest childhood, we should be allowed to believe. Belief, trust, joy, hugs, play, fun. We need those things. Right? And that's probably the last time in this recording I'm going to say it. Because that's the thesis. That's the idea I'm trying to get across to you. And you haven't had those things. You haven't had any of those things. You've only had dark abuses. You have to trust your government and be loyal and go to war when they tell you to. You have to hate this person because that person told you to. You have to be racist or sexist or genderist. You have to be afraid according to what you've been taught. You've been lied to. And I want every one of you to have those things, to be able to trust, to be able to play, to sit down under a tree and relax and breathe and see the beauty without worrying about being eaten by mosquitoes or getting ticks or having somebody come along and beating you up or so many things this world has taught you. You need to have these things without fear. Yeah, and here I will ask you to trust me. Because I cannot give you evidence unless you've already found it for yourself, and then you don't need it. Your world is changing. In the future, the lion and the wolf and the lamb will all lie down together and have a threesome. This is what the true holy books say. The lion and the wolf and the lamb will have wonderful orgasms together. This world will be a world not of peace, because peace is just a brief cessation of warfare, but of harmony. Children will quit doing violence to one another, and bullies will be a thing of history and someday forgotten. Parents will love their children and won't be tired and exhausted and abusive and make the mistakes that so many parents do. Children will love their parents and not be resentful, because parents won't have lied to them about Santa Claus and God and the Easter Bunny and all these dark stories of your past. Your world is right this moment becoming this wonderful place. And again, I ask you to believe me, but I don't require it or expect it, that between 2022 and 2025, this will have emerged. I've been saying this for more than a quarter century. That all of these changes will be obvious and you won't be able to deny them anymore. That wars will have ended and violence will have ended. And somewhere in there, other races in the galaxy that have been sitting and watching this world for thousands of years will come and talk to you and help you with things like fossil fuels and overpopulation and diseases. They will help you with millions of years of experience. And this will become a beautiful place. I ask you to trust me for at least a moment on this. I want you to imagine a world where there's no disease, where wild animals don't try to kill you, where you're not afraid of drowning or jellyfish or sharks when you swim in the ocean, where you can walk in the woods and not be chewed up by insects, and where if you get lost, say a child gets lost in the woods, they don't starve to death and get eaten by bears. Something immediately finds them. It feels they're lost and it comes and rescues them and brings them back with love and kindness. I want you to imagine a world like this, because this is where you're going. And you can see the roots of this everywhere. You can see the first flowers of spring showing up amidst the snow. And if you're aware, you can recognize that we're very close to a place where suddenly there's flowers on everything, and green and warmth and sunlight and not the cold of winter. This is where your world is going. And it's so close, just a few years away. And for a moment, just a moment, accept that idea and imagine living in it without the ability to play. Without joy, without being able to trust anybody, without hope, without anything to believe in that's bigger than you, because you're not that big. Nobody's that big. It helps to believe in something bigger, and there are bigger things, things that love you and would help you, not things that want to send you to hell or torture you. Imagine living in this amazing, better than Star Trek world. Imagine extraterrestrials walking down the street and saying hello. Imagine being able to wear what you want or dress how you want or be whatever gender or age you want. Imagine having all these things that the future promises you. Imagine having it in the next 5 to 7 years, but not having the basics of play, of joy, of trust. And you'll realize that with all that stuff, you're no better off than you are now. Now is the time in your life you need this. And the only way to get something you don't have is to work for it, to begin to practice it. And so I want you to practice trusting again. I want you to talk to a lover, and when they say, oh, I can do this, I want you to look them in the eyes and say, I trust you. And then say, but if I find you lying to me, I'll end this relationship. Because I require trust. If you lie to me, we're done. I want children to go to their parents and say, look, I trust you and I want to trust you. But if I find you lying to me like you've lied to me about Santa Claus and God and all the other silly things, I'm not going to trust you next time. Right? Give them that ultimatum, because that makes them live to a higher standard. It makes them try to be honest. Tell them it's okay to communicate. And what they want to communicate is that they've cheated on you or lied to you in the past. Don't get angry with them. You want them to trust you. And if they want to come and say they've made a mistake, listen to them. Don't get angry. Work together to communicate and heal. When you play games where nobody loses. Because otherwise you're just practicing warfare. If in playing a game you're competitive and you're fighting, stop playing that game. If you like doing sports, say you like playing racquetball or tennis or basketball or soccer, then play that game with people with the idea that you'll celebrate no matter who scores a goal and nobody will keep score. And if in that you find yourself getting aggressive or competitive, just put your hand up and say, hey, I got to sit out for a bit. I'm starting to become a savage. And all your buddies will say, well, now there's only 4 people on this team and 5 on that team. But it's okay, because we don't care who wins or loses. Give the ball to the other team on purpose so they can do something amazing. Let the other guy make the point in racquetball. And then celebrate how he or she did. Yeah, throw away the competition and make it a thing of joy. Play something like frisbee or catch where everybody has fun and nobody loses. Throw away your computer games of warfare and violence and competition. If a game doesn't have a cooperative mode, don't play it. If a game has a peaceful mode where all the monsters aren't attacking you, play it. You want to begin to practice a life without all the violence and hating. Find something worth believing in and practice believing. Don't call it a God. Please don't call it a God. You've got too much baggage tied to God. Just believe that there's something infinite and beautiful that loves you. And no matter how bad you screw up, it will still love you just as much. Practice believing, and it'll be hard at first. It's like, to come back to where we started, it's like having been burned by spilling hot water while cooking on your arms. And every time you get close to the fire after that, it hurts. Well, it doesn't mean stop cooking forever. Keep cooking, but be more careful. And when it burns, acknowledge to yourself that it burns, that it hurts. If you have lovers, friends, people you trust, say, hey, this hurts. If someone says, I want to be in a relationship with you, I want to have sex with you, I want to be your teacher, your student, be honest with them. Hey, in this moment, I feel this thing. And if they don't care, leave them. Find someone else to invest your love and your joy into. Begin to practice these things. Because that's the only way I know for you to get them, is to begin to practice them. Right? This is all I want to say, so I'll briefly summarize. A life without all of the basics: hugs, touch, sex, joy, walking in the sun, climbing a tree, petting your pets, hugging your child, loving your parents. A life without those basics is boredom and slow motion suicide. And yet every time you've tried those things, you've been burned and you've been lied to and you've been abused. The world is changing to a place where that abuse won't exist anymore, but you will still just be living a tiny fraction of a life if you don't have these things. Begin to practice these things. Invest your will and your power and your excitement and all the things you've learned in your painful, maybe horrible, difficult life. Invest the things you've learned into creating a life that has those things. You need this. You need this to be happy. And there's no point at all in living if you're not happy. You need these things. Practice them. Give it a try. Imagine a better world. Imagine how awesome it can be, because it will soon be. Imagine that. And begin to trust, to give, to believe once again.